There we go. All right, we're in business. Perfect. So we've talked about the burnout landlord. We're going to come back to that here in just a second. Now we're talking about the buying defaulted loans. As you know, there's been forbearance programs. There's been all these different things that have stopped people from making their payments, or the pandemic in itself. Maybe some people can't afford their payments. And what you got to understand is there was 5.5 million non-performing loans on average. They haven't been paying in 2 years. There was 5.5 million defaulted loans before the pandemic. So how many more are there now? And since there's been a wall holding these things up, at what point do they come crashing down? And what you got to understand is last month, about 300,000 loans, their forbearance programs expired. So they got to figure it out. They either got to modify it, get repaying again, sell, they got to do something. And this month, over almost 700,000. So more than double expired this month. So the wall's crumbling down slowly but surely. And the whole point is, buying defaulted loans is like fixing and flipping a house, but it's fixing and flipping the paper side of real estate. So you're buying these things extremely cheap to go out and either modify this, give the borrower a second chance and get them repaying again. And you're just in a good position. Or worst case scenario, hey, you could get the house back, but you're getting the house back for substantially cheaper than what you would have had you tried to buy it at wholesale or something like that. And so this is a huge conversation. I wish I had more time to talk about it. This is what I really have time to talk about during the one-day class. But I really want to talk about, since that's the note business, and maybe not everybody's in the note business now or yet, I want to talk about something that relates to everybody. And that's going to be acquiring more deals. So let's talk about really where we are today, right? Today in the marketplace, what's great is stock market's going crazy, obviously. Real estate market's going bananas. Houses are selling for crazy things, low interest rates, a lot of great things, right? But what's not really going great is obviously the fact that FHA loans, 14% of all the FHA loans are not paying. So tons of mortgages are in trouble in some form or fashion. 9% of all residential mortgages across the country are not paying. That's quite a number. 10 million renters are behind. Some of you have already experienced some of this, unfortunately, right? They're behind $54 billion in rent payments. I'm pretty sure that's a lot of money to everybody, right? And there's 35% less qualified people today for a mortgage than there were before the pandemic, right? And so there's a lot of things we're going to cover. Most of you also understand commercial real estate's in pretty deep trouble. This is it's a domino effect, right? One thing happens and it just falls, continues to fall. Commercial real estate's in trouble as well. But the reason I start with that is I want to kind of tie this into really the market conditions that have been presented. Is it's really hard to buy an asset right now, but it's extremely easy to sell something right now, right? And so really what I want to do is I want to say, if that's our market condition, this is the elephant in the room. What are we supposed to do about it, right? So I want to talk about really who the target is that you should probably be focusing on. Right now, who owns rent houses? You'll see that 72% are what we call mom and pop landlords, right? This is your average just American citizen, not a hedge fund, not a big corporation, somebody who owns 1 to 5 maybe rental properties. They're just a mom and pop investor. And as you can see, 16.9 million of these are owned in individual names, right? Mr. Johnson will tell you that it's not wise to keep things in your personal name. There's this concept of asset protection. If you'd like to talk more about it, I'm sure he can guide you down the path, right? But as you see, the majority of these are owned by individual names. Why is that? Because most of these people, again, are mom and pop investors who go to Wells Fargo or their community credit union and they get a mortgage. And the bank says, I'll give you a mortgage, but it's going to be in your name. You're going to be guaranteeing this. And the reason I start with this is really the demographic of people that we're targeting for a couple reasons, as you'll see. And we just call them the hobbyist landlord, right? The hobbyist landlord, again, they own 1 to 5. Yeah, they could own 10 or 20, but you get the idea. In general, if you average it out, they're going to own kind of in that smaller space. And this is data according to the Urban Institute. And really what they're talking about is not only are they in their individual names, they also are, they're self-managed. The majority of these people self-manage. See, everybody in this group has already been told a property manager, they can really help you a lot, unless you want to go do that work, unless that's going to be the thing that you do, right? And so what I'm trying to show you is the pain in the marketplace. You got somebody who's personally guaranteed something. You got somebody who's self-managing it, meaning dealing with all the tenant problems themselves. Oh, there they go. I was wondering why they weren't popping up. 14.3 million are self-managed. Now what I want to talk about is really who this demographic is, in addition to the pain piece, right? Because again, our job as real estate investors is not to buy houses at a deep discount or even buy houses. It's to bring a creative solutions to whatever their complicated problem is. And if I can bring a creative solution to a seller's complicated problems, we probably got a deal, right? And when you look at the numbers and you see that 60% of these assets are also free and clear, a lot of people think that takes the pain off of the table. And what I'm trying to talk about today is that it doesn't matter if the house is free and clear. It doesn't matter if there's a mortgage. There's pain there for a couple of reasons, because the unspoken pain in the marketplace today, believe it or not, is taxes, right? People, especially if you had a free and clear house and you've had tenant problems and all this stuff, and you decided, I'm going to sell my rental property, that's great. But what comes with buying a house down here and selling that rental property at this price? What do you owe the IRS, right? That is a pain that everyone's kind of considering. So we're going to talk about that. So to get everybody on the same page, we got a buyer, a seller, a house, and a bank. And if the seller was obviously to sell the property to an investor, say us, we'd end up owning it. And traditionally what you see is, again, these landlords, they're hobbyist landlords, they're going to go get a mortgage note from the bank. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you can get a mortgage, right? Obviously, there's a whole bunch of the country that can't get a mortgage. But in general, my conversation piece is this. How this conversation goes is understanding that what if we got rid of the bank altogether? And what if the seller was to become the bank? See, if I could have the seller play the role of the bank, then there's a lot more options. The house still remains as collateral. And there's really only two reasons why the seller would ever consider being the bank. And it's actually the same two reasons that I would and you. We're actually on the same page. It's what do I get? And what happens if things go wrong, right? What do I get? Either I get a price that I want that no one's giving me, I get a return on my investment, I pay less taxes, I do something that benefits me. And then the worst case scenario is I get the house back, I'm in the same spot, but it's at least always worth X, Y, Z, right? They're familiar with this asset. You're not asking them to take a Babe Ruth rookie card and just trust that it's worth the same amount, right? You're not making them jump through these hoops. And so really what I'm talking about today is, like I said, anywhere in the country, you bought a rental property, let's say for $100,000 in 2014. By 2021, it's worth $250,000. Well, congratulations. You made $150,000 that you could put in your pocket, right? Or can I, right? Here's the conversation. This is where kind of it changes, because really what I'm talking about with seller financing. If anybody's ever tried seller financing, you're thinking in terms of, well, I got to go convince the seller that they should seller finance. And you're just simply approaching it the wrong way. So I want to equip you today with a different way to pitch or offer this to a seller, right? You're trying right now to talk to a seller who says, I could sell it and take $150,000 profit, but if I'm paying 25% taxes, 30% taxes, whatever it is, right, for their situation. And there's movements already for bills to increase the capital gains for next year. They're talking about paying a ton of taxes that they don't want to pay. And so you get the excuses of, oh, I don't want to seller finance, right? Because they're thinking of something else. Instead, what we want to do is we want to change the dialogue. We want to change the conversation. You're trying to offer them right now, typically, a price they don't want, like a low wholesale price, right? I've been a wholesaler for 6-7 years. I totally get buying it cheap, right? But you're also asking them to pay taxes they don't want to pay. So now you're saying, here's a price you don't want, and here's some taxes you don't want to pay. Instead, now what we want to do is we want to change the conversation, and we say, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, I want to give you the price that you want, and I want to show you how you can take some money and put it in your pocket today, probably even tax-free. And then what I want to do is I want to show you how we can take the rest of the tax burden and I want to spread it out for the next 10 to 20 years so that you can pay a lot less taxes, maybe even earn interest on that to even offset your taxes even further. This is a much better conversation than, hey, you should seller finance, and will you give me 0% interest and no money down? And even though there's plenty of sellers who will do 0% interest and no money down, I'm just trying to give you guys, equip you with a little bit more different approach, right? And so this is where none of this is tax advice, but for simplicity purposes, I've thought of this a couple different ways. Let's just kind of talk about it. Instead of offering this low price or a seller financing traditional approach, We want to approach it more from we want to figure out how can we offer a tax strategy type of an approach. Now, we're not obviously giving tax advice. Instead, what we want to do is explain to them how this works. Look, the IRS has been doing this and offering this tax strategy for a very long time. They call it installment sales. I don't even have to be a tax expert. In fact, Mr. Seller, I'm going to equip you with the collateral, YouTube videos, white papers, documents to help you do your own research so that you can see what I'm talking about, right? And here's why this matters. See, once you tell the seller, I'll give you the price that you want, I'll give you some cash if you want it today to solve all your immediate needs, and I'll help you pay less taxes, you've already weeded out a lot of your competition. So you can quickly buy yourself some time to easily have this conversation. I personally like to go a little bit slower with sellers. Whereas when I'm buying a wholesale deal, we all know it's about speed. I'm not leaving this house without a signed contract because somebody else is coming in behind me. So take a look at this chart. When you're looking at an asset, there's always a portion of that asset that is not taxable, right? You've got things that you can write off. You've got depreciation that'll eventually be recaptured. You know, you've got your tax basis, whatever it is, right? That's not taxable. But then you've got the tax portion. And because of the giant run we've had over the last years, your tax portion continues to grow because your equity continues to grow. Everybody with me on that? And so what we're seeing now is, how are we supposed to have a competitive advantage in the marketplace? What's my secret sauce in this environment? Well, what if I could go to the seller and say, Mr. Seller, we talk about seller financing. What if I could give you 20 to 25% down? That's money today in your pocket. That's also, and again, it's going to be a deal by deal basis, but chances are it's within your tax basis. And so you're not going to be paying tax on that, right? And then on top of that, you're going to seller finance the 75%, right? And a couple of caveats as part of that is 75% lowers your risk as the seller financier, right? But also we're going to be adding in things there to, we're going to void your payments for a period of time. And now, why would I do that? Well, what I'm doing is, Mr. Seller, I want you to get the price that you want, and I want to give you capital today to put in your pocket. And I even want to give you the capital you need to pay your expenses over the next, say, 6 months until we can start making payments to you. So this truly becomes a no money out of your pocket. In fact, we're putting money in your pocket kind of a deal. Now you're getting a price you want. Now you're getting money today, tax-free possibly, that you could put into your pocket and cover your expenses. And we're deferring the taxes of the rest of this for the years to come. We're going to take that tax burden and we're going to spread it out. And I'll show you that here in a second. Now, here's the crazy part, because a lot of you heard me say, you're going to give the seller 20 to 25% down. Brian, why would I do that? Because we have a vendor that will actually put that money up for you. So this is truly a no money down type of investment. Give the seller a retail price, give them a down payment that you didn't come up with, someone else came up with. You're asking the seller to wait a few months while we repay our vendor, and I'll explain how that works here in a second. And then they're going to get cash flow and payments for years to come and take that tax burden and really spread it out. So when we look at this deal, here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about taking that giant gain of $150,000 that they could put in their pocket, allegedly, right? But instead of paying taxes on all that today, we're going to lay it down on its side. And we're going to say, look, over the next 15 years, 20 years, whatever you negotiate, you're only going to pay taxes on the portions you receive. So the money you get today could potentially be tax-free, right? If it's within your tax burden. Obviously, we'll talk to your accountant about that. But if I gave you $10,000 a year, and I'm just using round numbers, folks, you're only paying that tax burden on $10,000, not all of it. And if we're earning interest on that, it's further offsetting that. And so now what we're doing is we're allowing this person to see and rather expose the unspoken pain, the thing they don't really want to talk about. Yes, they want to sell their house at the top of the market. Yes, they really want to get the high price. No, they don't want to pay the taxes. And so I want to be able to address all of these things with the seller to truly be able to kind of get this across and try to help them. Because if I can provide the creative solution to their complicated problem, which sometimes is just, I don't want to pay the taxes. Well, great. Here's an opportunity to do it and keep the investment. And so I'll kind of go through this as an example, because Seth is an old school student who, good example, right? He's been talking to sellers who want high prices. He's got competition. He's tried the whole, I'll pay $1,000 more than any written offer thing. He's also doubled down on his marketing, right? Trying to just generate more leads. And really what he started to do is take a different approach, that the deal architect approach. And really what that is he was able to say, Mr. Seller, you're stuck on this $450,000 price, whereas my wholesale offer would be $375,000. What if I can give you $450,000? and I'll give you $50,000 today to meet your immediate cash needs. And it could be for anything. It doesn't even matter what it's for. It could be medical debt. It could be for fun. But if this is what they really need, the $50,000, I can give that to you as long as you're willing to sell or finance. And in this case, this was a 70-year-old man who moved out of state, and he just said, I don't want a 30-year mortgage. I'm cool. If you can wrap this whole thing up in 10 years, I'm good with that. And so this is a way that we can pay retail. We can have $50,000 to put down of somebody else's money. And this seller is going to be willing to defer some time, say, I'll wait a couple of months to start getting payments. As long as you're giving me the price that I want and you're giving me the capital I want today, yeah, we'll do that. Now, this happened to be a free and clear house, but even if they had a mortgage, we can make sure they've got the payments to cover their PITI for however long. Even if we wanted to stretch it out for 2 years, we still don't want to burden them anymore. And so the cool part of this is, again, they get their $50,000 today. And I'm telling you, the two numbers you see on the screen, I don't care what you're talking to about with the seller. This is all they care about. They care about what the price is, and they care about what are they getting in their pocket today, which might be nothing. But I want to show you how you can go ahead and give them a large amount of money today. And then they're going to carry the rest of that money tomorrow. And that's what's up for discussion, is that 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Well, now that I've got them interested in this concept, and let's say they decide to do this, I can now rent it out. I could wholesale it. I could do all this stuff. What I want to do personally, and let me show you, and this will expose you to a whole new world if you're not familiar. I can turn around and I can resell this to one of the most qualified borrowers in this space than there has ever been. And we call this person the penalty box buyer. Right. And it's funny because this dude's obviously in the penalty, but I love the sign behind it says, don't worry, golf is fun. You know, it's like, I think it's pretty funny, but really a penalty box buyer is a borrower that we look at in the marketplace and we say, who have the banks weeded out? Not because they're not qualified traditionally, but really just because the banks are reducing their risk. And this is the Mortgage Credit Availability Index from the Mortgage Bankers Association. And I know I'm talking fast, but luckily it's being recorded. I'm trying to get as much content across as I can, folks. And what this shows you is since the pandemic, there's 35% less qualified borrowers today than there were before the pandemic. And this is due to things like Chase Bank telling you, yeah, we'll give you a mortgage at 620 credit score. But really, they've raised it to 700. So it doesn't matter what they put in writing. What are they actually doing? They're actually only loaning to 700 credit scores and up. In fact, FHA, their website still says 580 credit score. But if you took a look at the last pool of loans that they traded, the average credit score was 754. So this is one of those follow the money, folks. Don't listen to what the marketing says, follow the money. And a lot of people really worry about this, especially if you've done lease options and stuff like this. These borrowers who are interested in lease to own, that's not what we're talking about. Those borrowers have like $500 to $5,000 down. According to Ellie Mae, who's really collecting all this data, the average down payment right now, not including refinances, obviously, we're talking about true acquisitions, is 19%. So what I'm trying to tell you is these borrowers have money. And if I could find somebody today with a 699 credit score that Chase kicked out and they're willing to give me 10 to 20% down, I feel like that's reducing my risk quite a bit, right? And so really what we're talking about is creative financing will always fill the gap when conventional financing doesn't. And before the pandemic, we started seeing loaning money was starting to get easier and easier, right? As Mr. Johnson just said, he experienced 2008 and he experienced the ninja loans, right? No income, no job in verification, any of that. Anybody can get a loan. Well, eventually what happens in every market cycle is what? An event happens, right? Lending dries up. In this case, there was a pandemic. And what happens is lending drops, right? And this is what we call scarce money. It's nothing you do. It's nothing you did. You didn't lose your job, maybe. Your credit score didn't change. Like your situation didn't change. The bank said, look, you're less qualified solely because we don't want to take a bigger risk. And what happens is that gives this massive opportunity for us in this other market to say we can go and serve all of these people, because it was $1 trillion marketplace before the pandemic. It's obviously substantially larger today. And I can get a more qualified borrower today with a bigger down payment today than ever before, and really continue to move forward. And these borrowers, because in this non-QM space, non-qualified mortgage borrower space, they pay a premium on the sales price, right? So if this thing appraised, let's just say it was worth about $450, I could charge a premium because I'm offering a service. So I could find a borrower willing to pay $475. I told you they have a down payment. This isn't even 20%, but that's $75,000 down that Seth is getting, and they owe Seth $400,000. Now, why would Seth be asking for such a big down payment? Because Seth could borrow that 50 grand from somebody, right? And in 30, 45 days, replace that money and put $25,000 in his pocket as well. So now the seller got what they want. Seth made $25,000 today as well. And when we're looking at creating a note, your acquisition is on the right. Now, Seth did an unbelievable job of getting the seller to commit to a 0% interest rate. I'm not saying it always happens, but if you've been following Eddie for a while, he talks about the talk off. What is the logical, rational way that we can use math to show the seller this is in their best interest? Here's our acquisition, our penalty box buyers. This marketplace pays between 6 and 10%. That's the rates for this secondary market. So this borrower paid 7%. That's what creates your cash flow, folks. And now Seth, instead of having a tenant, has a borrower who's paying $1,550 a month in cash flow that Seth is actually getting. And also in 10 years, if this borrower waits, they've got 10 years to either sell this thing, pay it off, or refinance it, right? And if in 10 years, when this balloon comes due, let's say he waits till the absolute last second, the penalty box buyer owes $343. Seth paid less interest, so he owes $266. Seth gets a bonus check of $76,000 for doing nothing but waiting as bonus income, right? And this is now a deal where he's making, $43,000 his first year. He's making $18,000 in cash flow. He obviously gets a big check at the end. He's making $287,000 on a deal that he paid retail for. He helped the seller get the money today they wanted, the price they want, and now they're deferring the taxes for the seller, so they're paying less taxes. And Seth is going to make a killing for helping this person. And my point isn't to get wrapped up in the big dollar amount, folks. My point is, because cut the numbers in half. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. My point is, are you missing deals like this? Are you talking to sellers who want a retail price? And then the second thing is, if you are you offering terms? And then the next thing would just be, well, if you're offering terms, are you doing it the traditional way? Are you actually trying to help them understand the market conditions? And this is where a whole lot of money can be made, truly helping a lot of people. And so I know I'm out of time, and so I'll kind of wrap it up with this last slide or two. And we could talk more about it if you want moving forward. But really, it's how do you kind of move forward from here? You got to figure out how to do this the deal architect way and really learn how to play the game that the banks play, right? Become the bank, because now you can reduce your risk. You can get rid of a lot of the headache. And as you saw, you don't have to sacrifice on your return on investment. Well, Seth's return on investment is infinite because he has no money in the deal and he made 25 grand up front, right? But you get the idea, right? And so here's what I want to do. I want to invite you all. I told you I teach a class for Note School. If you want to come, it's this next Saturday or whatever. September 11th coming up. It's a full day class. We go through all these case studies and we break them down to really help you better understand the ins and outs of this and how to actually go out and implement this in your business. And then once you understand what it looks like to create a note, then I get to spend the rest of the day really showing you what the note business is about, how you can do it in tax-free environments, how you can use notes to make money today, make money tomorrow, or both the same end result. It just depends on what are you trying to accomplish. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about this unbelievable leveraging strategy called partials, and we'll obviously dig into how to make some really big money from bad debts with non-performing loans. We're actually going to give away both of these books just for showing up to the class. We dig into obviously all of these niches a lot more. And I will say, if you'll just grant me another minute and a half, I got to share a passion project I have that I teach on Saturday. So many people are so focused on money today that they just say, I'll get to my money tomorrow. I'll build my wealth when I have more capital. And the problem with that, and I'm guilty of this as well, the problem with that is those years, they tick by real fast. And so one of the things I want to show you on Saturday is for those of you who really want to focus on making money now, I get it. But come learn how to do one note deal with $100 bill and turn it to $100,000 absolutely tax-free in a self-directed Roth account. From that one deal, now you can start to generate your wealth, set it and forget it. Now go back to focus on your making money today, whether it's flipping houses or whatever it is. Because once I could show you how to turn $100 into $100,000 from one note deal tax-free, once that account has $100,000, don't you think you could replicate that a few more times to build your wealth? You see what I'm saying? Building wealth can be a lot more simplistic with the note business because you're leveraging the money to make money, right? And so we'll obviously dig more into that. And so I know I spoke super fast. I really appreciate the extra couple of minutes here. Here's the information for the class. It's only $29. This is actually a $97 class. And we're actually running a special right now for $29. If you use this link because of the relationship we have, noteschool.com/Broward Network. If you go to that link, you'll be able to actually see a $29 price rather than going to Note School's site and seeing the $97 price. But it is 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. And this is a pretty interactive class. So bring your questions, bring your business problems, and really let's spend the day kind of digging into how we can help you either acquire more deals, adapt your strategy to make money and pay less taxes, or really what it looks like to use the note business to accomplish those same goals and really build some wealth. So I will turn it back over to you, Alex. Thanks so much. I tried to get as much as I could in about 30 minutes. So hopefully that kind of gave you guys some value, and I'm happy to, oh, I didn't send it. I just sent all my information in the chat. And if I need to, I can answer some questions. Otherwise, we'll see you guys on Saturday.
I'm sure there's some questions, so chime in.
I have a quick question for you, Brian.
Yeah.
A lot of this is based on saving the homeowner, the home seller, on their capital gains taxes, correct?
Correct.
So you're looking for someone who has not lived in the property for the last 2 out of the last 5 years, because all those people in Florida, if it's a single, as I put in the notes here, that a single person has a $250,000 capital gains exemption. A couple has $500,000 if they've lived in the property 2 of the last 5 years. It does not have to be consecutive. They can live there for a year, leave for 2 years, come back, live there for a year, leave for a year. And if they sell the house and they make $250,000, or it's a couple, they make 400 grand on the house, they don't pay a dime of capital gains on that. So how are you convincing that couple to sell a house when they don't have to pay capital gains? They're going to get all that 400 grand back instantly.
Sure. So that's a separate conversation. So again, this is all about the hobbyist landlord. There's millions of them.
Okay.
All I'm trying to do is highlight this as that is the demographic. If you need somebody to focus on right now, that is probably the easiest person to focus on because they have the most pain. Now there's an easy solution for that person as well, because they don't pay taxes, but once they sell the house, how are they going to make money on it? What if they could sell the house and get cash flow, get the money, the same amount of money, but get cash flow for the next decade?
Well, right? if they have a $500,000 house and they bought it for $100,000 20 years ago, and they're selling it for $500,000, they're making $400,000. That's where they're going to get the cash. The bank's going to send them a check at title closing for $400,000 plus what they paid for it, the $100,000 originally. So they're going to walk away with $500,000 and be like, why would I want to wait for my $500,000? I can literally take $400,000. I can take $100,000, buy another house right now. I can take $400,000 and reinvest it into something and start making tons of money off of that.
Yeah. So, and here's what I'll tell you is there are way less of those people that I've talked to, because those people don't call me on my marketing, right? There's not a pain. They understand I can just list it, right? The person who knows to just call an agent and list it and pay tax-free, they never contact me. I never get in touch with those people. I'm really focused on that niche of the market that most of us are, which is where's the pain at and how can I bring some solutions to the table? But I will also tell you in my experience, that same person who's getting a check for $500,000, they don't know what to do with it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's my job to convince them to say, look, go cash out and then lend on some of the fix and flips I'm doing, or be an investor in my note business, right? Because we're trying to convert every lead we can. And so if I sat down with that seller, I would encourage them, sell this thing, get it going, take that money tax-free. What are you going to do with that money? And then try to convert them into a lender, right? At a lower risk type of investment. So it's just kind of how I monetize the lead.
You can always use their $400,000 to help them reinvest it.
And if I could show them how to do it and get a better return than they're probably getting now with lower risk.
Oh, that's not hard to do in today's banks. If your money's sitting in a bank, you're just wasting your money.
Yeah. All right. Let's see if there's another question on here. If you have a question.
There was a question, where does the down payment money come from?
So Note School actually has a vendor who is more than happy to be this transaction source. And here's why. Think about this. Anybody who's ever raised money, you'll understand this. if I was the vendor and you came to me and said, Brian, I need to borrow $50,000 that's backed by a $450,000 house and a first position lien. It's pretty low risk, right? It's called a subordination clause. You're going to have the seller basically subordinate their first position rights. They're going to take a second position lien. And everybody on this call is like, I would never do that. You're right. You're a real estate investor. You probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't, because we value the lien. I'm going to tell you that 99% of the time, a seller doesn't know one way or the other. And as you explain it to them, hey, you're most protected here, but if you really want $50,000 down or $100,000 down, I can give that to you today, but you've got to go to a second position lien, which is still protected until we get this guy paid off in 45 days, 90 days, whatever the time frame is. Then you automatically become first position. And I'm telling you, there's a greed factor in everybody that they want the $100,000 more than they want first position over second position. It's not a real argument. I'll tell you that it becomes quite logical in their brain.
Hey, is this class online, the September 11th?
Yeah, it's a nationwide class, and it's all virtual. So when you go to this link and you register, you'll get kicked back the webinar links to attend. And like I said, the goal is to be pretty interactive. So this isn't something you want to be driving your car. This is try to bring your questions, try to engage. I think you'll get a lot out of it by the end of the day.
Brian, are there alternate dates in case that particular day doesn't work?
We are really, really working on it. We're actually trying to, as this class fills up, because as you would imagine, if 300 people came and they're all asking questions, it becomes, there's one person. So we're trying to monitor that. We're actually trying to set it up for the next weekend as well. But what's going to happen is if we decide that, hey, this class is really getting too big, we're going to redirect this link, the Broward Network link, to the next class. If you want to, if you're like, look, I really want to attend, I just can't come to this one, then simply email me, brian@noteschool.com, and say, can you get me into the next class? And we'll do it. And that way we'll get you signed up during the $29 period instead of giving you another link, because they'll make you pay $97. So. And my email is in the chat. It was brian@noteschool.com if you need to, if you need a different date or something, but yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Since I live in South Korea, I'm like 13 hours ahead of you. This is going to be like 11 in the morning. No, 11 at night until like 5:30 in the morning. Is there like a recording that I can watch instead?
Yeah. So that's the question I always get. And I always answer it the same way. I will do my best to hit record. I try every single time that I've ever taught this class to do it.
Today?
I am not the most tech savvy. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to just simply send me an email. Once you get signed up, send me an email. Hey, I signed up. I'm in South Korea. I'm not going to be attending. How can you help me? And I will either get you, if we record it, we got that recording. If not, I'll record the next weekend. Like we'll get you what you need. Or if I have to, I'll go find one that I've taught in the past and get it to you. As the market's been changing so much over the last 90 days, I'm trying to get like the latest information out. So I totally understand the scenario, and we'll make sure we help you out.
Thank you.
And for those of you, I know someone was in Canada and you're in South Korea. This is where Saturday is going to be very beneficial to learn about the note business, because it doesn't matter where you are. I actually just had the opportunity I've been living in Texas for basically my whole life, and we up and moved to Colorado because there's mountains and it's more fun here. So, it kind of gave me an opportunity, instead of the grind of driving around, flipping houses all the time. The virtual nature of the note business kind of allowed me to kind of move where I wanted. So it works even if you're out of the country and stuff like that. We've got a lot of people. We got a guy from Taiwan who that's all he does. He buys notes and stuff like that.
Looks like Brian and Ian both have questions, or Deborah and Ian.
Yeah, hi. So thanks, Brian. And thanks, David. I asked the question about the down payment, and I understand your answer. But after all that's completed and you have your eventual, I guess, owner of the house, once you've, in a sense, flipped it to them, I'm not sure that I understand properly, and maybe you can enlighten me. It seems that there will be two mortgages on that property for $400,000. The one that's owed to the original owner and the one that's owed to you as the investor.
Correct.
So I know that you would have no problem with going in second position. Is that what you're saying would happen? Or
Yeah. So I'm just the middleman. My positioning is I'm a little bit less concerned because I have zero money in the deal, and my job is just to make sure everybody gets what they're wanting. The borrower who puts a big down payment down is incentivized to make the payment, and if they don't, I have every right to go and take the house back and resell it and get another down payment. Right? You can do that as your protection, and obviously with the knowledge, that's where the security comes in. It's not in the lien position. Right? The chances are that the seller, well, in this case, the seller would have first position solely because it's a free and clear house. But a lot of the houses we're talking about, they've got a mortgage on it. In fact, on Saturday, I'll use an example of a woman that we spoke to. She bought the house 10 months ago on a 0 down VA loan. How much equity could possibly be in a house when you put no money down and you've only made 10 payments, right? And so how do you go about taking that and using a legal vehicle to wrap it and produce another note, right? And so that's kind of the approach. And really, this is why I say notes is just simply a promise to pay, because people really like to get focused on, well, there's a mortgage. If there's a mortgage involved, how could somebody else owe somebody money? You're forgetting that when you borrow money from your bank in your mortgage, your bank is borrowing money from, say, the Fed. The Fed is borrowing money from, say, bondholders or whatever. That money is always being moved. Money is like energy, right? And so because of that, all we're trying to do is play the exact same game. And we're using the few laws that we have to our advantage to be able to do this. And it's kind of been cool to watch Eddie do it, or hear about Eddie doing it over the last 40 years, because no matter what part of the market cycle you're in, it starts to be advantageous, more and more.
Right, but at the end of the day, when if the final buyer defaults on their obligation to you, you're still responsible for that first $400,000 loan. So that's basically what I was getting at. That you basically know the property and you have the debt anyways, so it doesn't really matter. It may take you a month or two to get that new deal going, and you may have to make those $1,000 payments for those 2 months. But other than that, you're good to go. Okay, that's what I was asking. Great. Thanks.
You bet.
Deborah had a question? Dave Pollock?
David Pollock has his hand up.
Yep.
So I wanted to ask, what percentage of the deals that you put together and do, the way I understood what you're doing, you're just middling all these deals, giving somebody 0% and taking 7 from your buyer. Is that pretty much what your angle is right now?
It's basically an arbitrage strategy. Yeah. Now that's one example, right? Now, chances are, like on Saturday, I'll show you, this woman had a VA loan basically at 4.25%, and we're going to sell or finance it for 6%. Well, the borrower is going to pay 6 to 10% interest, and that's going to give me some level of cash flow. You got to find a solution, obviously, that works for the seller, and you got to find a borrower that it's going to work. They've got to make sure it's affordable. Otherwise, you're going to come into some Dodd-Frank, SAFE Act compliance stuff that it's like, we got to make sure to avoid all that. And that's really where on Saturday, you'll hear me say several times, like, here's some ways you can skirt the law, but why would you? It's not much more work, literally a couple of phone calls to do it the right way. And now you could buy 1,000 of these every year if you wanted to. Just set it up the right way, and you'll be good to go. And so we want to make sure everybody can afford it, because especially for my business. Now, I do know some people they want to be in the foreclosure business. They want to take houses. I don't. I want a borrower who's just going to pay me cash flow. And if they could pay me for 30 years, cool, man. And whenever you want to refinance or pay it off or sell it, you go ahead. But I just want the cash flow. And once I have that and you sell it and I get my capital, then let's go do it again, kind of a thing. I don't really want the house back, but I absolutely have legal rights to say, if you don't pay me, I will come take this house and I will resell it and get a whole nother down payment down that I owe nothing to the seller on. And when things go bad, the bank typically wins. That's what you got to understand. If you look into bank history, you start finding out the banks don't lose that often. It's pretty rare.
Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think Deborah had another question.
By the way, I can't see.
I don't have a question. Why did
As you put in the chat, she doesn't have a question.
No, Ian's still got his hand up.
I do, yes. You mentioned that if the property that you're buying from the original owner has a mortgage on it already. In Canada, there's most mortgages have a clause in there that says due on sale.
Yeah, same
Does
thing in
that,
America.
does that happen in the States as well, or?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you really want some light reading, and I mean that in the most sarcastic of ways, you can go look into the Garn St. Germain Act of 1978, 82. I don't know. I can't remember the year. You can Google it. My point is there's a handful of ways that the current law says, look, you can take a mortgage and you can move it to another entity, another party, whatever, without triggering the due on sale clause. And yes, there's a specific way to do that. And no, you shouldn't try to figure it out on your own, right? This is where even I'm going to be like, you need to go find an attorney who specializes in this, and we can help you do that too. Unless you happen to know one on the screen.
I got you. I'll talk to Alex. I got you. All right. So there's a way of doing it, just that. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
The other thing is, I think when you're educating the people, the seller of the deal, they don't know what if like me, I know a lot, I do a lot of mortgages. That's my business. I know a lot about it, so I know the laws, but most of these other people have no clue about what the law says. So they may not even go that route. And as long as you protect your butt on the deal that you put together, you should be fine.
Well, and this is one of the things I really admire about Eddie Speed is being in business for 40 years, you kind of have to do things the right way to stay in business for that long. And he has this integrity level that I just really admire, where there's totally a way you can shortcut something, but he's so good about just being transparent, and he'll just tell you up front, Mr. Seller, this is how I'm going to make money. Mr. Seller, this is why I got to get 0%. Like, he just tells them, and people are okay with it. And it's almost like, it's really convinced me of like, if you'll just go out and truly take that approach of like, I'm going to help this seller, right? Yes, I want to buy their house. And yes, I want to make a lot of money on it. But in doing so, I've got to really make sure I help this seller. And I want to make sure they understand it, because one of the problems with Dodd-Frank from the past is the borrower didn't know, the other party didn't know, this wasn't disclosed. And so if I can disclose everything and still make just as much money and have way less headache, of course I'm going to do it. So you just want to do it the right way. And that's one of the things I admire about Eddie, and really how he teaches it from the get-go.
Yeah, Brian, I can mention on that too. I'm in real estate, and not only is it a requirement by law that we be fiduciary, we disclose everything, and we have to be upfront and honest. But before I was a realtor, I've been flipping my own houses. And I've always told my contractors that come in and do work, or a buyer that comes in, yeah, this is how I'm making money. And you're right. People are cool with it. They want to know how you're making your money, because that way they're like, okay, now I'm at ease. I know how people are making money. No one's trying to scam me. I think the biggest fight out there, if you ever open up your email and you look at like 50 emails and half of them are scams, so you don't bother clicking on them because you're scared there's a virus in them. Well, if they were upfront and honest, you wouldn't have to worry about that. So that's, I think, what being upfront and honest with people is. And for my last 30 years in business, I have found that as long as I'm honest with people, I may piss a lot of people off with honest answers. And I'm going to tell you, people get angry sometimes because I tell them the truth. And if they don't like it, I'm sorry, that's the truth.
Here's what the truth does is the truth helps the seller feel confident, but the truth helps the seller understand I could never do this on my own anyway. I can't find the buyer the way they're finding the buyer. I don't have access to people with 75 grand down. Otherwise, that's who I would have called. Right. So it helps to eliminate a lot of objections even. So.
Precisely.
Well, let me do this because I'm actually out of time. You've got my email address. If you've got more questions, feel free to reach out. I'd really encourage you, with as cheap as they've got the class right now, just bring the questions to the class and let's use them. Let's use case studies to answer them so you can kind of see kind of how it all works. But I really appreciate you sharing the meeting with me, and hopefully you got something out of it, and let's all go do some deals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, great presentation. And as you can see, there's a lot more material to be covered. So I encourage everyone to consider taking the full all-day class.
I'm going.
Thank you, Brian. Fantastic job.
Thank you.
Trying to cover all the bases in such a short period of time.
You bet. Y'all have a great rest of your day.
All
right, Brian. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting y'all.
Thank
See
you,
you there, Brian.
everybody.